We move on to react to Graeme Souness's scathing criticism of Ange Postecoglou. Um, yeah, so Souness, he's very critical of Ange Postecoglou. We know Tottenham find themselves in a not a rough period, but not a great start to the season. They're sitting in ninth place right now in Premier League through 7 games. They've won 3 games and lost 3, and they drew 1. Not been that great of a start. It's been a team that lacked that cutting edge, especially earlier on this season. They would dominate games, but just couldn't get the goals, and then teams would come the other way against the run of play and get a goal or take advantage of set piece like Arsenal did against Tottenham, and the results weren't coming early on. Then Tottenham started to build a period of a consistency with piling up, some good wins, getting 3 goals past Man United, 3 goals past Karabakh, 3 goals past Brentford, and getting the goals and having a little bit more cutting edge. But then now this past weekend, they are up 2-0, and drop a they lose a 2-0 lead within the span of 18 minutes, and they go from up 2-0 to down 3-2. And it's that was a bad result on a Tottenham team that was going on a good run, but it sort of shifted the narrative from Postecoglou, who plays amazing football, and the teams play great football, but he has a stubborn way about it. And when the results are great, everybody's gonna be, wow, Postecoglou, brilliant manager, blah blah blah. But when the results are bad, people are, it's going to be heavy criticism because of his stubbornness. And that's just the good and the bad with it. And Graeme Souness, obviously being the emotional journalist he is, obviously when the good is going good, he might get carried away, but when bad gets bad, he's coming out with comments saying Postecoglou is lucky and naive, and he said it was a madness that he didn't take any of his staff to Tottenham. Let's get the quotes exactly what he said actually. The only time when I think of Ange Postecoglou, I go back to the game against Chelsea where they got 2 players sent off and he still had them playing right up to the halfway line. The only time you can do that is when you've got 11 players on the pitch and the ball is constantly under pressure. The minute someone can get their head up, you're in trouble. They could have conceded 4 or 5 more goals that game. I thought that was naive. It's naive to talk like that and say that the more open the game is, the better it is. If they lost that game 7 or 8 goals to 2, you've lost the players as a manager. He wasn't brave that day. They got lucky. Wow, there's and there was some other things that he said I can't find. Oh yeah, he also continued to say he's walked into Tottenham without bringing any of his own staff. Is he so naive as to think he can trust any of the coaching staff he's inherited not to go to the chairman with their tittle tattle? I would not take a job and think I can just walk into it. It's madness. You need to go in with people you trust because a manager is lonely. And I do agree with that part. He continued on saying, you'll learn it at school. When you're 2-0 up, the next goal is vital. If you concede, the momentum is suddenly with the opposition. But if you go to 3-0 up, the game is over. I don't know if Spurs have any leaders. When they go into the dressing room at halftime, the chat should be, we can't concede the next goal. The game is far from over. That's what Ange Postecoglou should be telling them. He needed to remind them that if they were to concede, everything's going to be all over you. The issues at Spurs boiled down to the manager and the coaching staff. The only message they needed to give the players in that game when the halftime whistle blew was to play more of the game. Spurs just ended up capitulating, which is why Postecoglou was so deflated after the game. He thought he had some warriors in that team and was proven otherwise. I do have to say, though, there's a lot to unpack there. Let's address each piece bit by bit. The first comments was him discussing the Chelsea game. I still think that was madness, playing halfway to the line with 9 men. When you're playing with 9 men, you have to change it. I mean, that's just, there's a fine line, there's a fine line between being, committed and dedicated to your style of play and your approach, to just flat out stubbornness. And there's a good kind of stubbornness and there's a bad kind of stubbornness. And he crossed the fine line with this a bad stubbornness, because that is just suicide. What the approach that they had in that Chelsea game with 9 men in that second half. He's just conceding the game at that point. He's just conceding the game, and maybe it's a part of his, trying to build a long-term, trying to build into their psyche of of his style of play. But that was just suicide. And in that game, as a manager, you should be doing everything you can to make the in-game adjustments to give your team the best chance to win. You're not giving your chance the best chance to win when your back four is lined up at the halfway line going up against a team that has 2 more men on the pitch. It's ridiculous. And it made the game just... It made the game... usually when games are open, it's fun to watch. It made the game hard to watch because that did not look like football. That looked like a basketball game, that game. I still remember it to this day. It looks like I say to this day like it was a long time ago. It was only last season. But I still remember it to this day. And it was crazy. So that was his first. The second part, walking into Tottenham without bringing up any staff. Look, this is something obviously as soon as he's a manager, he recognizes the staff, the importance of a staff, and it's something I can't really speak on to a major extent. But I know this: the staff is important in any sort of, coaching role, whether it's NFL and the people you bring in. Your assistants is very, very important. You need to have a cohesion even amongst the staff. And the fact that I don't know if it is actually true, I'm just first hearing it, but if it's true that he walked in there and he didn't bring any of his own staff, for me that's crazy. That is crazy. I do agree that is madness. But again, that's not something I can speak extensively on because of the fact that I've never been a manager. And when he said, and I agree with the 2-0 part, it is a dangerous lead 2-0 because one goal completely changes the momentum of the game. And I do agree when he says, do Spurs have any leaders? No, they don't have any leaders. They don't have any leaders. I think I was talking about this a few days ago, in which how whenever things get rough, going the wrong way, who's the player that, tries to calm it down just for a period to see them out of, dangerous period. Who's that leader? I said this a few days ago myself. I think this was on this past Monday, when I was speaking initially about the Tottenham Brighton game. They are a team that's lacking leaders. But when he says the issues at Spurs boil down to the manager and the coaching staff, I don't agree with that, because look, there's been a lot of coaching staffs and a lot of managers that have been managing Tottenham over the last few years, and they've had these same issues, these same mentality issues, the same bottling issues, where they concede leads, where they concede goals, in which they just completely bottle it and they don't show up to the level that they're expected to be at. So to say the issues at Spurs boil down to the manager, no, I don't agree with. Especially when, when the highs are highs for Tottenham, when they were having that great start to the season last season, when they were on their run that they had after that Arsenal game, there was no talk about Postecoglou, he's being the problem, he's this, he's that. But when the bad results start coming again, suddenly he's a problem again. I don't like that emotionally high and low aspect of it. I think people need to just steady down and understand there's huge benefits of a manager like Ange Postecoglou and what he, the product that we see on the field game in, game out. But there's also some negatives in how they can sometimes be open to play against. There's sometimes, he's sometimes stubborn and is not willing to adapt and can put, these Tottenham players in a vulnerable position. So it just needs more objectivity there when it's the reporting of this.